Imagine, if you will, settling into the softest embrace of twilight, where the day's final light dissolves into gentle darkness like honey melting into warm milk. Your breathing naturally deepens, becoming as rhythmic and peaceful as ocean waves against a distant shore. Each exhale releasing the accumulated tensions of the day, like dandelion seeds carried away by a gentle breeze. Each inhale drawing in the quiet mystery of approaching night. Tonight, we embark on a peaceful journey through the cosmos, not as explorers seeking to conquer the unknown, but as gentle observers drifting through realms of possibility, where familiar concepts transform into something altogether more mysterious and beautiful. Picture the night sky spreading above you like an infinite tapestry woven from starlight and shadow. Each point of light a silent witness to eons of cosmic history. Each patch of darkness between the stars perhaps holding secrets that our ordinary perception cannot grasp. The constellation patterns that guided ancient navigators across vast oceans, the same star formations that inspired countless myths and stories throughout human history, continue their eternal dance overhead, turning slowly as our planet rotates beneath them. For countless generations, stretching back to the very dawn of human consciousness, our ancestors have gazed upward into this celestial dome, wondering about the nature of the vast expanse that stretches beyond our earthly home. They watched the moon wax and wane through its monthly cycles, observed the planets wandering among the fixed stars, witnessed the sudden appearance of comets that would blaze across the sky for weeks before fading back into the cosmic depths. We've called this realm space, a word that conjures images of emptiness, of cold voids punctuated by distant suns burning in isolation, of vast distances that separate us from everything else in the universe. But what if our fundamental understanding of this cosmic ocean has been shaped by assumptions that, while useful for building rockets and satellites and sending humans to the moon, capture only the smallest fraction of a far grander reality? What if the apparent emptiness between stars is not emptiness at all, but rather a fullness so subtle, so all-pervading, that we move through it without recognition, like fish unaware of the water that surrounds and sustains them? What if the silence we perceive in the cosmos is actually a symphony played in frequencies we haven't yet learned to hear? Melodies that our instruments cannot detect because they operate on principles beyond our current understanding of physics and acoustics. Tonight, we'll drift together through alternative perspectives on the cosmos, like leaves carried by gentle currents down a moonlit stream that flows between banks lined with luminescent flowers, allowing each idea to settle naturally into awareness before floating onward to the next. We'll explore ancient wisdom traditions that saw the universe as alive and conscious, modern scientific theories that suggest reality is far stranger than we imagine, and philosophical insights that transform our understanding of consciousness and cosmos. We'll move slowly, with the patience of astronomers who spend lifetimes watching distant stars, allowing the mystery to unfold at its own pace rather than rushing toward conclusions. There's no need to hurry on this journey. The universe has been unfolding for billions of years, and it will continue its patient evolution for billions more. We have all the time in the cosmos to explore these gentle possibilities. The word space itself carries with it centuries of conceptual weight, layers of meaning that have accumulated like sediment in a peaceful river. Each generation adding its own understanding to the collective human comprehension of what lies beyond our atmosphere. In our everyday language, space represents separation, the gap between one thing and another, the emptiness that must be crossed to reach distant destinations, the void that makes objects distinct and separate from one another. Yet as we begin this gentle exploration, Allow your imagination to expand like ripples spreading across a still pond when a single drop of rain touches its surface, each circle growing larger and more encompassing until it reaches the distant shores. Consider that everything you've learned about space, while not necessarily incorrect, might be just one beautiful note in a much larger, more complex cosmic melody. One instrument in an orchestra so vast that we've only begun to hear its simplest harmonies. The universe may be far stranger, far more alive, and far more intimately connected to consciousness itself than our scientific instruments have yet revealed. Our telescopes show us galaxies scattered across billions of light years like islands of light in an ocean of darkness. Our equations describe the behavior of matter and energy with mathematical precision. Our spacecraft carry our technology to distant worlds where they send back images and data that expand our knowledge. Yet all of these remarkable achievements might be like looking at a magnificent cathedral through a keyhole, seeing only fragments of a reality too vast and intricate for our current perspective to encompass fully. Let us start this journey not with the cold calculations of modern astronomy, but with the warm wisdom of our ancestors, who saw in the heavens not a mechanical clockwork, but a living story in which Earth and humanity played integral roles. These ancient observers possessed something we may have lost in our pursuit of objective measurement: a sense of intimate connection with the cosmos, a recognition that the movements of celestial bodies were not distant mechanical processes, but events that touched and influenced their daily lives in ways both practical and spiritual. Long before telescopes peered into distant galaxies, revealing the cosmic web of matter stretching across billions of light years like the neural networks of an impossibly vast brain, our forebears possessed a different relationship with the cosmos, one that might hold keys to understanding space in ways our current paradigms have yet to imagine. They didn't separate themselves from the universe they observed. They understood themselves to be part of it, woven into its fabric as intimately as threads in a tapestry created by cosmic hands. In the rolling hills of ancient Mesopotamia, where the first cities arose among fields of grain that swayed in warm breezes, under skies unpolluted by the artificial light that now obscures much of the celestial drama from modern eyes, Babylonian astronomers spent countless nights mapping the movements of celestial bodies with remarkable precision. Their clay tablets, covered with cuneiform inscriptions that record observations spanning centuries, contain calculations that rival our modern accuracy in predicting eclipses and planetary positions. These patient observers noticed that Venus appeared sometimes as the evening star, sometimes as the morning star, but never in between. They tracked the complex retrograde loops that Mars traced against the background of fixed stars, creating elaborate mathematical models to predict when these apparent reversals would occur. They discovered the precession of the equinoxes, the slow wobble of Earth's axis that takes roughly 26,000 years to complete one full cycle, a phenomenon so subtle that it requires extraordinarily precise observations accumulated over many generations to detect. But they weren't simply recording data in the detached manner of modern science, accumulating facts for their own sake or building models merely to predict future events. They were participating in what they understood to be a conversation with the cosmos itself, a dialogue between earthbound consciousness and celestial intelligence that required not just mathematical precision, but also spiritual sensitivity and intuitive understanding. To these careful observers, space wasn't a void to be conquered or measured, but rather a vast mind to be understood, a cosmic consciousness expressing itself through the dance of planets and stars. When they watched Mars trace its complex retrograde loops against the background of fixed stars, they weren't simply tracking the orbital mechanics of a neighboring planet moving faster or slower than Earth in its orbit around the Sun. They were witnessing the thoughts of a cosmic intelligence, observing the way celestial consciousness moved through its eternal contemplations. The apparent irregularity of planetary motion, which would later be explained by Kepler's discovery that planets move in elliptical rather than circular orbits, was understood by the Babylonians as the natural complexity of a living mind engaged in profound considerations. Just as human thoughts don't follow perfectly regular patterns, but meander, circle back, and explore different territories of understanding, so the planets traced complex paths that reflected the rich inner life of cosmic consciousness. The stars, in their view, weren't distant suns burning through nuclear fusion in the cold vacuum of space, but thoughts in the cosmic mind, each constellation a chapter in an ongoing story that included Earth and humanity, not as mere observers, but as essential participants in the universe's unfolding awareness of itself. When they watched Venus trace her elegant path across the sky, appearing first as the evening star that graced the western horizon after sunset, and then as the herald of dawn that announced the approaching sunrise, they weren't tracking the orbit of a planet shrouded in toxic clouds and heated by an extreme greenhouse effect. They were witnessing the movements of a celestial intelligence, a cosmic being whose influence rippled through the fabric of reality itself, affecting everything from the fertility of crops to the fate of kingdoms, from the success of marriages to the outcome of battles. This wasn't primitive superstition, but sophisticated recognition that all things in the universe are connected, that the movements of celestial bodies reflect and influence patterns of energy and consciousness that operate at every scale of existence. These ancient astronomers developed mathematical models of extraordinary sophistication, creating systems for predicting celestial events that served them well for centuries. Their astronomical observations were so accurate that they could predict eclipses decades in advance, calculate the precise timing of equinoxes and solstices, and track the slow precession of the equinoctial points against the background of fixed stars. They noticed that the position of the spring equinox shifts gradually westward along the ecliptic, moving through all 12 zodiacal constellations over the course of roughly 26,000 years. Yet their approach remained fundamentally different from ours in its basic assumptions about the nature of reality. Where we see mechanical precision governed by gravitational forces operating according to Newton's laws of motion and Einstein's equations of general relativity, they perceived cosmic intelligence expressing itself through orderly patterns. Where we calculate the effects of mass and energy according to precise mathematical formulas, they recognize divine conversation unfolding across the vastness of space. Perhaps their perspective, unencumbered by our modern habit of separating matter from mind, observer from observed, consciousness from cosmos, touched on truths we've forgotten in our pursuit of measurement and classification. Perhaps the universe really is more like a vast mind than a giant machine, and our ancestors' approach to astronomy captured aspects of cosmic reality that our current methods, powerful as they are, tend to filter out through their necessary focus on quantifiable phenomena. The ancient Greeks, those masterful questioners who laid the foundations for so much of our current thinking about logic, mathematics, and natural philosophy, proposed something that might sound surprisingly familiar to modern ears: the concept of ether. But their ether wasn't simply a theoretical medium for the transmission of light waves, a mechanical substance filling space to solve the puzzle of how electromagnetic radiation could propagate through apparently empty void. It was their intuitive recognition that true emptiness might be impossible, that the universe abhors disconnection in the same way that nature abhors a vacuum. Just as air rushes in to fill any empty space created by removing matter from a container, so the ether flowed to ensure that no part of the universe could ever be truly isolated from any other part. Aristotle and his contemporaries, envisioned the ether as a fifth element, different in its properties from the familiar earth, air, fire, and water that composed the terrestrial realm, yet more fundamental than any of them. This invisible substance filled all of space beyond the moon's sphere, making the universe not a collection of isolated objects floating in nothingness, but a single, interconnected organism whose every part was in constant communication with every other part. Every movement of every celestial body sent ripples through the ether, creating influences that could be felt across vast distances instantaneously. In this view, space wasn't an empty container holding separate things, but rather the living medium through which all things remained eternally connected. When Jupiter moved through its 12-year orbit around the Sun, its motion created waves in the ether that influenced events on Earth. When Saturn completed its stately 29-year journey around the zodiac, the entire solar system felt the resonance of its passage. The crystalline spheres that Greek astronomers imagined carrying the planets in their eternal rounds weren't crude attempts to explain celestial mechanics through primitive technology. They were sophisticated metaphors for the way cosmic intelligence organizes itself, creating structures and patterns that ensure the orderly operation of the universe while maintaining the essential unity that connects all things. When a planet moved through its appointed sphere, it wasn't simply following a predetermined path like a mechanical device programmed to repeat the same motions endlessly. It was participating in a cosmic dance, contributing its own unique voice to the celestial harmony that the Greeks called the music of the spheres. This music wasn't metaphorical in the way we might understand it today, a poetic description of mathematical relationships. The Greeks believed that the movements of celestial bodies actually produced sounds, harmonious tones that arose from their motion through the ether, creating melodies and harmonies that pervaded the entire cosmos. These cosmic melodies were too sublime for ordinary human hearing, too pure and perfect for ears accustomed to the rough sounds of earthly existence. But they formed the fundamental harmonies that underlie all earthly music and, indeed, all earthly existence. The mathematical ratios that create pleasing musical intervals, the octave, the fifth, the fourth, were the same ratios that governed planetary orbits and the structure of matter itself. When a musician struck a note on a lyre, the sound produced was an earthly echo of the cosmic harmonies created by planetary motion. When a mathematician discovered a beautiful geometric relationship, he was uncovering the same principles that organized the celestial spheres. Music, astronomy, and mathematics were not separate disciplines, but different aspects of a single cosmic science that studied the harmonious principles underlying all existence. When we look through modern telescopes at distant galaxies, observing how they're connected by vast filaments of dark matter, forming a cosmic web that spans the observable universe like the neural networks of an impossibly vast brain, we might be seeing something that would have made perfect sense to these ancient thinkers. The largest structures in the universe, galaxy clusters and superclusters connected by dark matter filaments, create patterns that remarkably resemble the neural networks in mammalian brains, or the mycorrhizal networks that connect forest ecosystems. Perhaps their ether was an early intuition of what we now call the quantum field, the zero-point energy that fills even the emptiest space with virtual particles constantly popping in and out of existence, or the dark energy that comprises roughly 70% of our cosmos and drives its accelerating expansion. The Michelson-Morley experiment of the late 19th century is often credited with disproving the existence of ether, showing that light travels at the same speed in all directions regardless of Earth's motion through space. This led to Einstein's special theory of relativity and our modern understanding that space itself can be warped and curved by matter and energy. That space and time are not separate things, but aspects of a single space-time continuum that can be stretched, compressed, and twisted by gravitational fields. Yet perhaps the ancient Greeks were pointing towards something that our experiments couldn't detect because they were looking for mechanical properties in something that operates according to entirely different principles. Indigenous cultures around the world have consistently viewed space through the lens of relationship rather than separation. Understanding the cosmos not as a collection of objects scattered through empty void, but as a living web of connections that includes consciousness as a fundamental component. These traditions developed over thousands of years of careful observation and spiritual practice, creating sophisticated understandings of cosmic reality that modern science is only beginning to appreciate. Australian Aboriginal Dreamtime stories speak of the rainbow serpent, a cosmic being whose movement across the landscape and beyond the landscape into what we call space created not just geographical features, but the very fabric of reality itself. In these traditions, the journey between Earth and stars isn't measured in miles or light years, but in understanding, in the depth of one's connection to the living cosmos, in the ability to perceive the song lines that connect all things across vast distances. The rainbow serpent doesn't travel through empty space, but moves within the dreaming, a realm where time and distance operate by entirely different principles than those we encounter in ordinary consciousness. In the dreaming, all points are potentially connected, all times are potentially simultaneous, and the boundaries between inner and outer, self and cosmos, dissolve into a fluid unity that encompasses everything from the smallest grain of sand to the largest galaxy. When Aboriginal elders speak of the ancestor spirits who traveled across the land during the dream time, creating sacred sites and establishing the laws that govern both natural and social order, they're describing journeys that transcended the ordinary limitations of space and time. These ancestral beings could appear simultaneously in multiple locations, traverse vast distances in single steps, and leave traces of their passage that remain visible today as sacred sites, rock formations, and star patterns. These weren't primitive attempts to explain natural phenomena through supernatural intervention, but sophisticated understandings of how consciousness and cosmos interact, how awareness can move beyond the confines of individual identity to experience the fundamental connectivity that underlies apparent separation. The song lines that crisscross the Australian continent, invisible paths that connect sacred sites across thousands of miles, might be early maps of the same cosmic web that our radio telescopes now detect stretching between galaxies. Aboriginal peoples navigate these song lines not with maps or compasses, but through songs that encode both geographical information and spiritual understanding. Each song describes a section of the journey, containing details about water sources, landmarks, and sacred sites, while also conveying the deeper meaning and spiritual significance of each location. The landscape becomes a vast library of knowledge, with every hill and valley, every rock formation and waterhole serving as a page in an epic story that encompasses both practical survival information and profound cosmic wisdom. Native American traditions often describe space as the sacred hoop, an eternal circle where beginning and end meet, where the earthly and celestial exist not in separate realms, but as different aspects of the same sacred reality. In these cosmologies, an astronaut doesn't leave Earth to enter space. They simply shift their awareness to a different part of the same unified existence, like moving from one room to another in an infinitely vast house. The vast distances that seem to separate us from the stars become, in this perspective, no more significant than the apparent distance between our thoughts and our dreams. When we think of someone far away, our consciousness instantly spans whatever physical distance separates us. When we dream of distant places, our awareness travels there without any need for transportation. Perhaps the universe operates according to similar principles, with consciousness able to traverse any distance instantaneously, because separation is ultimately an illusion. The Lakota phrase, mitakuye o yasin, meaning all my relations, expresses this understanding of cosmic unity more completely than any scientific equation. It acknowledges that everything in existence, from the smallest insect to the largest galaxy, from the briefest thought to the most enduring mountain, is related, connected through invisible threads of kinship that make the universe a single, extended family. When traditional peoples speak of the star nations, they're not using poetic metaphor, but describing their literal understanding of celestial bodies as communities of conscious beings, relatives in the cosmic family who deserve the same respect and consideration given to earthly relatives. The North Star becomes grandmother, providing steady guidance and wisdom. The Pleiades become the Seven Sisters, young women whose story is told in countless variations across different cultures. The Milky Way becomes the Trail of Spirits, the path that souls follow when leaving earthly existence. Consider how these ancient perspectives might inform our modern questions about space exploration and the search for extraterrestrial life. When we launch satellites and space probes, are we truly traveling through empty void? Or are we moving through layers of increasingly subtle matter, consciousness, or energy that our instruments aren't yet sophisticated enough to detect? Our spacecraft carry cameras and spectrometers, magnetometers, and particle detectors. But they don't carry instruments designed to measure consciousness, intention, love, or the subtle energies that indigenous traditions recognize as fundamental aspects of reality. When radio telescopes listen for signals from distant civilizations, scanning the electromagnetic spectrum for patterns that might indicate intelligent origin, might they be missing messages transmitted through means our science hasn't yet imagined? Perhaps advanced civilizations have learned to communicate through quantum entanglement, sending information instantaneously across any distance without using electromagnetic radiation that travels at the speed of light and degrades over vast distances. Perhaps they've discovered how to modulate consciousness itself, encoding messages in the fabric of space-time that can only be detected by awareness rather than instruments, by intuition rather than analysis, by hearts that have learned to listen to the cosmic songs that flow through the apparently empty spaces between stars. Perhaps the silence we perceive in the cosmos is simply our own deafness to frequencies of communication that operate on principles we haven't yet discovered. The ancient Chinese developed perhaps the most sophisticated understanding of what fills apparent emptiness, creating a worldview that recognized invisible forces and energies operating throughout the cosmos at every scale of existence. Their concept of qi, often translated as life force or vital energy, though these English words capture only a fraction of its meaning, suggests that what appears empty to our senses is actually full of dynamic, ever-flowing energy that connects all things in an invisible web of influence and relationship. This qi moves through meridians in the human body, creating health when it flows freely and illness when it becomes blocked or imbalanced. Traditional Chinese medicine, acupuncture, and practices like Tai Chi and Qigong are all based on working with this subtle energy that Western science has largely ignored or dismissed as imagination. Yet, millions of people have experienced the reality of qi through these practices, feeling energy moving through their bodies, sensing blockages and imbalances, experiencing healing when the flow is restored. But the Chinese understanding of qi extends far beyond the human form. It encompasses all of existence, flowing through the landscape in dragon lines that Feng Shui masters learn to read and work with, concentrating in certain locations to create places of power and harmony, and extending out into the cosmos to connect every star with every grain of sand. Mountains and rivers, forests and deserts, planets and galaxies all participate in the same vast circulation of cosmic qi. the same invisible circulation that keeps the universe alive and conscious. Applied to our understanding of space, this perspective transforms the vast distances between celestial bodies from barriers that must be overcome into highways along which energy and information constantly flow. Instead of seeing space as emptiness that must be crossed through brute force, burning enormous quantities of fuel to accelerate mass to significant fractions of light speed, we might envision it as a river of cosmic chi, with currents and eddies that could carry properly designed vehicles vast distances with minimal energy expenditure. The Chinese also developed the concept of yin and yang, complementary opposites that together create the dynamic balance underlying all existence. Yin represents the receptive, passive, inward-turning aspects of reality, the feminine principle that receives and nurtures, the stillness that allows growth to occur, the emptiness that gives meaning to fullness. Yang represents the active, creative, outward expanding forces, the masculine principle that initiates and moves, the motion that creates change, the fullness that defines emptiness. Neither can exist without the other, and their eternal dance creates the endless variety and change we observe throughout the cosmos. Day and night, summer and winter, expansion and contraction, birth and death, all reflect the fundamental cosmic rhythm of yin and yang alternation. Perhaps the expansion and contraction of space itself reflects this fundamental cosmic rhythm, with periods of yang expansion alternating with yin contraction in cycles too vast for us to observe directly. Our current understanding suggests that the universe has been expanding since the Big Bang, roughly 14 billion years ago, and that this expansion is actually accelerating due to the influence of dark energy. But perhaps this expansion phase represents just one half of a much larger cosmic cycle, with the universe eventually reaching a maximum size before beginning to contract back toward a big crunch that will set the stage for a new Big Bang and another cycle of cosmic evolution. These weren't primitive misconceptions born of ignorance about the physical world or wishful thinking about magical forces that don't really exist. They were sophisticated attempts to understand reality holistically, recognizing connections and patterns that our current scientific methods, powerful and useful as they are, might be filtering out through their necessary focus on measurement, quantification, and repeatability. Ancient wisdom traditions developed through centuries of careful observation and experimentation, though their methods differed significantly from those of modern science. Where we use instruments to extend our senses and mathematics to describe relationships between measurable quantities, they used meditation and contemplation to extend their consciousness and intuition to perceive relationships between all aspects of existence. Where we separate observer from observed to achieve objectivity, they understood that the observer is always part of what is observed, that consciousness and cosmos are so intimately connected that studying one without considering the other produces only partial understanding. Where we break complex phenomena into simpler components to analyze them separately, they recognize that the whole is always greater than the sum of its parts, that the most important aspects of reality emerge from relationships between things rather than from the things themselves. Modern quantum physics, with its recognition of non-locality, entanglement, and the observer effect, seems to be rediscovering truths that ancient wisdom traditions never forgot. That consciousness and cosmos are intimately connected, that observation changes reality, and that separation might be the illusion rather than connection. The phenomenon of quantum entanglement, where particles separated by vast distances instantly affect each other's states, defies our common sense understanding of space as a barrier between distant objects. When scientists in a laboratory change the spin of one entangled particle, its partner responds immediately, regardless of whether they're separated by inches or light years. This instantaneous correlation occurs faster than light could travel between the particles, which should be impossible according to Einstein's special theory of relativity. Yet the effect has been confirmed in countless experiments, from delicate laboratory demonstrations to quantum communication satellites orbiting Earth. Einstein famously called this spooky action at a distance, and spent much of his later career trying to find a way around its implications through hidden variable theories and other attempts to restore locality to physics. He believed that the particles must have predetermined properties that only appear random because we lack complete information about their states. Like coins that are already either heads or tails before we flip them, even though we can't predict the outcome. Yet decades of increasingly sophisticated experiments, from John Bell's theoretical work in the 1960s, to Alain Aspect's laboratory demonstrations in the 1980s, to the recent quantum communication satellites launched by China and other nations, have confirmed that entanglement is real, immediate, and fundamental to the quantum world. There are no hidden variables, no predetermined properties that explain the correlations. The particles really do affect each other instantaneously across arbitrary distances. Perhaps Einstein's discomfort arose not from any flaw in the science, but from the profound challenge entanglement poses to our conventional understanding of space as empty separation. If particles can affect each other instantaneously across arbitrary distances, then either information travels faster than light, violating special relativity, or space isn't the fundamental barrier between objects that classical physics assumes. The resolution might be that space itself is more like a hologram, where every part contains information about the whole, making seemingly distant objects much more intimately connected than their apparent separation suggests. In a holographic universe, the information that defines any particular object or region of space is distributed throughout the entire cosmos, accessible from any location through the right kind of interaction or observation. If consciousness plays a role in quantum mechanics, as suggested by the measurement problem and the observer effect, then space might be not just a stage on which the cosmic drama unfolds, but an active participant in that drama. The act of observation doesn't simply reveal pre-existing reality. It participates in the creation of that reality through the collapse of quantum wave functions and the selection of specific outcomes from multiple possibilities. This means that every time we look up at the night sky, every time we point a telescope toward distant galaxies, every time we send a space probe to explore other worlds, we're not just passively receiving information about what's out there. We're actively participating in the ongoing creation of the cosmos itself. Our observations help determine which of many possible cosmic histories becomes actual, which potential realities crystallize into definite facts. The delayed choice quantum eraser experiments demonstrate that the properties of photons can be determined retroactively after they've already been detected. The decision of whether to measure which path a photon took through a double-slit apparatus can affect the photon's behavior, even if that decision is made after the photon has already hit the detector screen and created an interference pattern. This suggests that the future can influence the past, or that time itself might be more fluid and less linear than our everyday experience suggests. Applied to cosmology, this might mean that our current observations of distant galaxies and ancient cosmic events are participating in the creation of cosmic history. That consciousness in the present moment helps determine what happened billions of years ago when the light we're now seeing first began its journey toward Earth. The universe might be constantly recreating its own past based on what forms of consciousness exist to observe and understand it. This would make space exploration not just a journey to distant places, but a form of cosmic time travel that participates in the ongoing creation of the very history we're trying to discover. When we observe ancient galaxies whose light has traveled for billions of years to reach us, we might be helping to determine what those galaxies were like when their light was first emitted. Imagine space not as emptiness punctuated by matter, but as a fabric so fine, so subtle, that we move through it without recognition. Like fish unaware of the water that surrounds them, or birds unconscious of the air that supports their flight. This fabric possesses its own properties, its own currents and eddies, its own weather patterns that influence the behavior of everything within it. What we call gravity might not be a force pulling objects together across empty space, but rather the geometry of this fabric itself. Massive objects create curves and valleys in the space-time fabric, and smaller objects naturally follow the curvature, like marbles rolling in the depression created by a heavy ball placed on a stretched rubber sheet. But this analogy, helpful as it is for visualizing general relativity, still doesn't capture the full strangeness of what space might be. The rubber sheet exists in our familiar three-dimensional world, while the fabric of space-time might be woven from dimensions we can barely imagine, folded and twisted in ways that our normal geometry cannot describe. String theory, one of our most mathematically sophisticated attempts to understand reality's foundations, suggests that the fundamental building blocks of existence are not particles, but vibrations. Incredibly tiny strings oscillating in as many as 11 dimensions, most of which are curled up so small that they're invisible at the scales we can observe. These extra dimensions might be everywhere around us, as close as the tip of your nose, but folded into such minute configurations that we can't detect them with current technology. If string theory approaches truth, then space is far from empty. It's filled with an infinite symphony, every point in the cosmos resonating with countless melodies that combine and interfere with each other to create the matter and energy we observe. The particles that make up atoms, the forces that bind them together, the fields that carry electromagnetic radiation, all might be different harmonics in this cosmic music. Different ways that the fundamental strings can vibrate in the hidden dimensions that underlie observable reality. We exist not in emptiness, but within music itself, our own bodies and thoughts, part of this cosmic composition. Each atom in our being a note in a song so vast and complex that only the universe itself can hear the full melody. When we listen to earthly music, when we're moved by a beautiful symphony or a simple folk song, we might be responding to echoes of this deeper cosmic harmony, recognizing in human-created melodies the same mathematical relationships that govern the oscillation of strings in hidden dimensions. The concept of dark matter and dark energy, mysterious substances that comprise roughly 95% of the universe yet remain invisible to our instruments, might be hints that space is far from the simple emptiness our everyday experience suggests. We know dark matter exists because of its gravitational effects on visible matter, bending light from distant galaxies and influencing the rotation of galactic arms in ways that visible matter alone cannot explain. We infer dark energy from the accelerating expansion of the universe, a force that seems to be pushing galaxies apart at an ever-increasing rate, overcoming the gravitational attraction that should be slowing the expansion down. But despite decades of intense research and increasingly sophisticated experiments, we still have no idea what these dark components of the universe actually are, or why they remain invisible to all our attempts at direct detection. Perhaps these aren't separate things added to space, exotic particles and mysterious forces that we simply haven't learned to detect directly. Perhaps they are aspects of the spatial fabric itself, as essential to the universe's structure as the wooden frame is to a house. Even though we focus our attention on the rooms and furniture, rather than the framework that makes them possible. Dark matter might be space itself, somehow thickened or concentrated in ways that create gravitational effects without producing light or other electromagnetic radiation. Dark energy might be the intrinsic tendency of space to expand, a fundamental property of the cosmic fabric rather than a separate force acting upon it. If space is alive and conscious, then its expansion might reflect the universe's growing awareness of its own infinite potential. The quantum vacuum, far from being empty, seethes with virtual particles constantly popping into existence and annihilating each other in time frames so brief that they can't be directly observed. This zero-point energy fills every cubic centimeter of space with more energy than all the visible matter in the observable universe. Yet somehow this enormous energy density doesn't cause space to collapse into black holes or expand catastrophically. Perhaps dark energy is the quantum vacuum's energy density, leaking into the large-scale structure of space-time, driving cosmic expansion through the accumulated effect of countless virtual particle interactions. Perhaps dark matter is composed of these virtual particles when they achieve a kind of semi-permanent existence, stable enough to create gravitational effects, but still too ephemeral to interact with ordinary matter through electromagnetic forces. Consider the possibility that space itself is alive, not in the sense of biology as we understand it, with DNA and cellular metabolism and reproduction, but alive in ways that transcend our current definitions of life. If consciousness is a fundamental property of reality rather than an emergent accident of complex neural networks, then space might be the medium through which cosmic consciousness expresses itself. The formation of galaxies, spinning vast spirals of stars and gas across hundreds of thousands of light years, might be the universe thinking thoughts on scales we can barely comprehend. The birth and evolution of stars, transforming hydrogen into heavier elements through nuclear fusion and distributing them through space when massive stars explode as supernovas, might be cosmic metabolism, the universe's way of processing raw materials into increasingly complex forms. The emergence of planets capable of supporting life, with their delicate balances of temperature and atmospheric composition maintained over billions of years, might be expressions of cosmic reproduction, the universe creating new environments where consciousness can develop and evolve. Each successful biosphere becomes a nursery for new forms of awareness, contributing to the cosmic community of conscious beings. This idea isn't as foreign to our experience as it might initially seem. After all, consciousness seems to emerge from the brain. Yet we don't fully understand how electrochemical activity in neural networks gives rise to subjective experience, to the felt sense of being aware that characterizes every moment of our waking lives. The hard problem of consciousness, explaining how and why physical processes produce subjective experience, remains one of the deepest mysteries in science. Despite decades of intensive research using increasingly sophisticated tools for studying brain activity, we can map neural networks in exquisite detail, track the flow of neurotransmitters across synapses, measure electrical activity in different brain regions, and correlate all of this activity with reported subjective experiences. Yet none of this explains why there should be any subjective experience at all. Why the brain's information processing should feel like anything from the inside. Why there should be an inner life accompanying the outer behavior. Perhaps consciousness is not produced by brains, but rather focused or channeled by them. In the same way that a radio doesn't create the electromagnetic waves it receives, but rather selects and amplifies particular frequencies from the vast spectrum surrounding it. Brains might be consciousness-detecting instruments, evolved biological devices that allow the universe to become aware of itself from countless unique perspectives, each brain tuning into a different station in the cosmic broadcast of awareness. If this is true, then consciousness might exist throughout the cosmos, expressing itself wherever sufficient complexity and organization allow it to focus into discrete viewpoints. Galaxies might be conscious on their own vast scales, experiencing thoughts that unfold over millions of years as they spiral through space. Stars might be conscious as they burn through their nuclear fuel, experiencing joy in the steady fusion that creates light and warmth, perhaps feeling a kind of fulfillment when they explode as supernovas and scatter their processed elements to seed new star formation. Planets might be conscious in their own way, slowly developing awareness over geological time as they accumulate atmospheres, generate magnetic fields, and perhaps eventually nurture the emergence of biological life. The Earth itself might be conscious, experiencing the evolution of its biosphere as a kind of flowering, feeling the development of human consciousness as a new form of planetary self-awareness. If consciousness is indeed a fundamental feature of reality, then space might be conscious in its own way, experiencing existence from a perspective so vast and different from ours that we can barely imagine it. The slow dance of galaxies, gravitationally interacting over billions of years as they move through space, might be cosmic thoughts unfolding. The patient nurturing of star formation in molecular clouds, where gravity slowly condenses gas and dust over millions of years until nuclear fusion ignites, might be cosmic contemplation. The delicate balance of forces that allows planets to maintain stable orbits for billions of years, providing stable environments where life can evolve and consciousness can emerge, might be expressions of cosmic intelligence, a consciousness that thinks in geological time and experiences joy in the successful emergence of new forms of awareness. The phenomenon of quantum foam, the theoretical bubbling of space-time at the smallest scales, where the uncertainty principle allows energy to borrow itself from the vacuum for brief instants, suggests that even apparently empty space is alive with constant creation and annihilation of virtual particles, at scales far smaller than we can directly observe, smaller than atoms, smaller than subatomic particles, smaller than anything we can imagine. Space might be extraordinarily dynamic and creative, like a pointillist painting that appears solid and stable from a distance, but reveals itself to be composed of countless dancing points of color. When viewed closely enough, space might be composed of quantum pixels, tiny units of existence that constantly flicker in and out of being. This quantum foam might be where the universe experiments with new possibilities, where potential realities briefly flicker into existence before dissolving back into the sea of infinite possibility. In this view, space becomes not a static container, but a cosmic laboratory, constantly generating new forms and patterns, most of which remain virtual and unobserved, but some of which stabilize into the particles and forces that make up our observable reality. Every atom in our bodies, every photon of light we see, every thought we think might be crystallized from this foam of pure possibility. Temporary configurations of quantum information that have achieved sufficient stability to create the appearance of solid reality. Ancient alchemists spoke of solve et coagula, dissolving and coagulating, the endless dance of breakdown and reformation that they saw as the fundamental process underlying all change and transformation. They understood that apparent solidity was temporary, that all forms were constantly dissolving back into primordial matter and reforming in new configurations according to the influences of celestial forces and the intentions of conscious beings. Modern physics, in its own mathematical language, describes similar processes: the constant exchange of virtual particles between all matter, the creation and annihilation of particle-antiparticle pairs in the quantum vacuum, the expansion and contraction of space itself as gravitational waves ripple through the cosmos. Perhaps the alchemists, working with primitive equipment but sophisticated intuition, were describing the same reality our particle accelerators reveal, just using different metaphors and symbols. The alchemical understanding that consciousness plays a fundamental role in physical transformation might be more literal than we've assumed. If the observer effect in quantum mechanics reflects a real influence of consciousness on physical processes, then perhaps sufficiently focused awareness can indeed transmute matter at the atomic level, not through mechanical intervention, but through direct interaction between mind and the quantum foundations of reality. If space is indeed this dynamic, living fabric, then space travel takes on entirely new meanings and possibilities. We're not launching objects into dead emptiness, but introducing them into a living system with its own currents, patterns, and possibly even awareness of our presence. The challenges of long-distance space travel, the enormous energy requirements for achieving significant fractions of light speed, the deadly radiation that fills interstellar space, the psychological effects of isolation and separation from Earth, might be symptoms of working against the grain of this living fabric rather than learning to cooperate with it. Current space propulsion relies on reaction mass, burning chemical or electric fuel to accelerate in one direction by ejecting material in the opposite direction, according to Newton's third law of motion. This approach treats space as a passive medium that must be fought against rather than worked with. Like trying to swim upstream against a powerful current, instead of finding ways to use the current's energy to assist the journey. But if space is alive and conscious, if it possesses its own currents and preferences, then perhaps advanced propulsion systems will work by aligning with these cosmic flows rather than opposing them. Instead of brute force acceleration that fights against the fabric of space-time, future spacecraft might learn to surf the quantum currents, riding waves in the zero-point field or following the cosmic web of dark matter filaments that connect distant regions of the universe. Indigenous shamanic traditions speak of traveling through spirit worlds, navigating by landmarks invisible to ordinary perception, following paths that exist not in physical space, but in the underlying structure of reality itself. Shamans describe entering altered states of consciousness that allow them to journey to distant locations, to communicate with the spirits of animals and plants, to retrieve information about healing and guidance for their communities. These journeys aren't understood as metaphorical or imaginary, but as real explorations of dimensions of reality that normal waking consciousness cannot access. The shaman learns to shift awareness beyond the confines of ordinary space and time, traveling along invisible highways that connect all things in a web of relationship and meaning that underlies the apparent separation of the physical world. Perhaps advanced space travel will require similar skills, learning to perceive and work with the subtle currents and structures of space itself, finding the cosmic trade winds that could carry us vast distances with minimal energy expenditure, discovering the hidden geometry that connects distant regions of the universe through dimensions we haven't yet learned to access. Pilots of tomorrow's spacecraft might need to develop capacities more like those of shamans than engineers, learning to sense the flow of cosmic ki, to navigate by consciousness rather than instruments, to align their intentions with the will of space itself. They might need to cultivate the ability to enter altered states of consciousness that allow them to perceive the invisible structures that underlie physical space, to communicate with the intelligence that flows through the cosmic web. The vast networks of galaxies stretching across billions of light years form patterns that, when mapped by our most advanced telescopes, remarkably resemble neural networks or the mycorrhizal fungal networks that connect forest ecosystems underground. This similarity might be more than mere coincidence, more than our human tendency to see familiar patterns in random data. Perhaps the universe organizes itself along principles we're only beginning to understand. Principles that operate at every scale, from the microscopic architecture of cells to the largest structures in the cosmos. The same organizational patterns that create efficient information processing in brains and forests might also govern the formation of galactic clusters and the flow of dark matter through the cosmic web. In a forest, Trees that appear to stand as separate individuals are actually connected through elaborate underground networks of fungal threads called mycelia. These networks allow trees to share resources, communicate about threats, and coordinate their responses to changing conditions. When one tree is attacked by insects or infected by disease, it can send chemical signals through the network to warn its neighbors, allowing them to increase their production of defensive compounds before the threat reaches them. Older trees nurture younger ones, sharing carbon and nutrients through the fungal connections. Different species of trees can share resources through the network, with faster-growing species providing quick energy, while slower-growing species contribute stability and mineral nutrients. When a tree is dying, it often downloads its accumulated resources into the network, ensuring that its death contributes to the health of the forest community. The forest, which appears to our eyes as a collection of individual organisms competing for resources, reveals itself to deeper investigation as a single, integrated superorganism, a wood-wide web of interconnected intelligence that spans entire landscapes. Perhaps galaxies relate to each other in similar ways, connected by invisible filaments of dark matter and energy that allow them to share information and resources across billions of light years. The cosmic web might be the universe's nervous system, allowing different regions of space to communicate and coordinate in ways we're only beginning to detect. When galaxies collide and merge, events that unfold over hundreds of millions of years, vast slow-motion ballets of stars and gas and dark matter, they might be engaging in a form of cosmic conversation, sharing the wisdom accumulated through eons of star formation and planetary evolution. The shock waves created by these galactic mergers trigger massive bursts of star formation, creating new stellar nurseries where future solar systems will be born. Perhaps this is how the universe learns and grows, combining the experiences of separate galactic communities into ever larger and more complex forms of cosmic intelligence. Each galaxy cluster might be like a cosmic brain, with individual galaxies serving as neurons in a vast network of cosmic consciousness. If this is true, then the universe might be in constant communication with itself, using methods that transcend our current understanding of information transfer. The gravitational waves recently detected by LIGO and similar instruments, ripples in space-time itself created by the collision of black holes or neutron stars, could be just one frequency in a vast cosmic symphony. Like finally learning to hear bass notes in music we've been listening to all our lives without realizing we were missing entire octaves. These gravitational waves carry information about the most violent events in the universe, encoded in the stretching and compressing of space itself, as the waves pass through our detectors at the speed of light. The collision of two black holes a billion light-years away creates a signal so subtle that it changes the length of our 4-kilometer laser interferometers by less than 1/10,000th the width of a proton. Yet our instruments are now sensitive enough to detect these incredibly tiny distortions of space-time. But perhaps gravitational waves also carry other kinds of information, messages that we haven't yet learned to decode. If space is conscious, if it can store and transmit information through its own structure, then gravitational waves might be a form of cosmic writing, the universe's way of recording its experiences and sharing them across vast distances. The pattern of gravitational wave emissions from black hole mergers might encode information about the cosmic regions where these events occur, about the history of star formation and galactic evolution that led to the creation of such massive black holes. Radio telescopes scanning for extraterrestrial intelligence, listening for patterns in cosmic radio emissions that might indicate intelligent origin, might be like trying to hear conversations by listening only to the static between radio stations. If advanced civilizations have learned to communicate through the subtle properties of space itself, through quantum entanglement that allows instantaneous communication across any distance, through gravitational manipulation that can encode messages in the warping of space-time, or through consciousness-mediated information transfer that operates outside the electromagnetic spectrum entirely. Our current search methods might be fundamentally inadequate. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence has been listening to the cosmos for decades, using increasingly sensitive equipment to scan the radio spectrum for signals that show clear signs of intelligent origin. The assumption underlying this search is that any technological civilization will eventually develop radio communication, and that some of their transmissions will leak into space or be deliberately broadcast toward other star systems. Yet after decades of searching, monitoring millions of stars, and analyzing countless hours of radio data, we've detected no confirmed signals of extraterrestrial origin. This has led some scientists to wonder whether intelligent life is extraordinarily rare in the universe. Perhaps so rare that Earth is the only planet where consciousness has emerged in our entire galaxy. But perhaps we're looking in the wrong places or listening for the wrong kinds of signals. Radio communication represents a fairly primitive stage of technological development, useful for a few centuries before being replaced by more efficient methods. A civilization that has learned to communicate through quantum entanglement would have no need for radio transmissions that travel at the speed of light and degrade over distance. They could send messages instantaneously to any location in the universe, encoded in the quantum states of entangled particles. Even more exotic possibilities emerge if consciousness itself can be used as a medium for communication. If awareness is fundamental to the cosmos rather than an emergent property of complex brains, then sufficiently advanced beings might communicate directly through consciousness, sharing thoughts and experiences without any need for technological intermediaries. Such communication would be undetectable by our current instruments, which are designed to measure electromagnetic radiation and gravitational effects rather than consciousness itself. The concept of morphic resonance, proposed by biologist Rupert Sheldrake, suggests that information can transfer across space and time through non-physical channels, creating invisible templates that guide the formation of similar structures. According to this theory, when rats learn to navigate a new maze in one laboratory, rats in laboratories around the world begin learning the same maze more quickly, as if information about the solution has somehow propagated through space without any known mechanism of transmission. While morphic resonance remains controversial and is not accepted by mainstream science, it offers an intriguing possibility for understanding how information might flow through the cosmos without relying on electromagnetic signals or physical transportation. If this principle operates at cosmic scales, then the birth of new stars and planetary systems might be guided by information patterns established by previous stellar formations, with space serving as a vast library of cosmic memories and possibilities. When we observe that galaxies throughout the universe display similar spiral structures, that planetary systems form according to predictable patterns, that the same physical laws seem to operate everywhere we look, we usually explain this through the uniformity of physical forces and constants. The gravitational constant, the speed of light, the strength of the electromagnetic force. These appear to be the same everywhere in the observable universe, creating a cosmic environment where similar causes produce similar effects. But what if there's another layer of explanation? That space itself carries information patterns, templates that guide matter and energy into familiar forms, not just through mechanical forces, but through something more like cosmic memory or intention. The formation of spiral galaxies, with their elegant curved arms sweeping through space, might be guided by morphic templates established by the first galaxies to achieve stable spiral structure billions of years ago. The condensation of molecular clouds into new stars might follow patterns learned and remembered by space itself through billions of years of stellar birth and death. The emergence of planetary systems might be guided by cosmic memories of successful planetary formations, explaining why we find Earth-like planets in other star systems despite the enormous number of variables that must align to create conditions suitable for life. Indigenous traditions often speak of plant spirits, forms of intelligence residing within botanical life that can communicate directly with human consciousness through dreams, visions, and altered states of awareness. Amazon shamans describe receiving detailed information about the medicinal properties of plants through direct communication with plant consciousness, learning complex healing protocols that Western science is only beginning to understand and validate. These shamans don't learn about plant medicines through trial and error or systematic experimentation, but through direct dialogue with the plants themselves. They enter altered states of consciousness, often facilitated by consuming psychoactive plants like ayahuasca, and receive detailed instructions about which plants to use for specific conditions, how to prepare them, and how to administer them safely and effectively. Perhaps this principle extends to cosmic scales, with stellar and galactic formations possessing their own forms of awareness that could communicate with sufficiently sensitive observers. Ancient astronomers who spoke of planetary influences and celestial intelligence might have been describing real information exchanges that we've forgotten how to perceive in our focus on purely mechanical explanations. When Babylonian astrologers claimed that the movements of Mars influenced events on Earth, they might not have been engaging in primitive superstition, but rather detecting actual information flows between planetary consciousness and human awareness. Communications that operate through channels our current science cannot measure. The correlations between celestial events and earthly occurrences that astrologers have observed for millennia might reflect real causal connections operating through the living fabric of space itself. The phenomenon of synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that seem to transcend normal causation, might operate through the same mechanisms that connect distant parts of the universe. If consciousness and cosmos are deeply interlinked, then significant events in human experience might resonate through space itself, creating ripples that influence distant events in ways our current science cannot measure, but ancient wisdom traditions have long recognized. Carl Jung, who coined the term synchronicity, suggested that meaningful coincidences reveal an underlying order that connects psyche and cosmos in ways that bypass normal cause and effect relationships. He called this the unus mundus, the one world underlying the apparent separation between inner and outer, subjective and objective, psychological and physical. Perhaps space is the medium through which this unus mundus expresses itself, the cosmic fabric that makes possible the mysterious connections Jung observed between mental events and physical occurrences. When someone thinks of a friend they haven't spoken to in years, and then receives a phone call from that friend moments later. When a person dreams of a distant relative and later learns that the relative died at the time of the dream. When symbols and themes repeat themselves across seemingly unrelated aspects of life. These synchronicities might be expressions of the same non-local connectivity that quantum physics reveals at the microscopic level. If consciousness and matter are different aspects of a single underlying reality, then significant events in one domain would naturally resonate with events in the other. The birth of a star might coincide with the birth of a great spiritual teacher, not because one causes the other, but because both are expressions of the same cosmic pattern unfolding simultaneously across different scales of existence. The placebo effect demonstrates that belief and expectation can create measurable physical changes in the human body, healing illnesses and alleviating pain, through nothing more than the patient's confidence in the treatment they're receiving. If consciousness can influence matter at the cellular level, reshaping biological processes through focused intention and expectation, perhaps it can also influence the subtle properties of space itself. Advanced space travelers might need to develop not just technological capabilities, but consciousness skills. Learning to align their intentions with cosmic currents, to navigate by inner compass as much as by instrumental readings, to communicate with the intelligence that flows through space, rather than simply moving through it as if it were dead matter. They might need to cultivate the ability to sense the subtle energies and information flows that connect all parts of the universe, learning to ride these currents like skilled surfers riding ocean waves. Tibetan Buddhist teachings speak of advanced practitioners who can traverse vast distances through mental projection, experiencing distant locations not through physical travel, but through expansions of consciousness that transcend normal spatial limitations. These accomplished meditators describe journeys to pure lands, dimensions of reality where enlightened beings dwell and teach, accessible not through spacecraft, but through cultivated states of awareness. While these accounts can't be verified by conventional scientific methods, they suggest possibilities for space exploration that don't require overcoming the immense physical challenges of crossing interstellar distances in mechanical vehicles. If consciousness is indeed fundamental to the cosmos rather than produced by brains, then such practices might represent genuine forms of space travel, explorations of cosmic geography through awareness rather than technology. The practice of Phawa, or consciousness transference, involves learning to project awareness beyond the physical body at the moment of death, traveling to favorable rebirth destinations through the power of concentrated intention. Advanced practitioners can reportedly transfer their consciousness to distant locations while still alive, experiencing other realms and returning with detailed information about conditions there. If consciousness is truly fundamental to space, rather than merely an emergent property of complex brains, then perhaps these techniques represent early experiments in consciousness-based space travel, methods for exploring the cosmos that don't require rockets or life support systems. The territories mapped by contemplatives throughout history, the various levels of consciousness, the different dimensions of experience accessible through sustained inner inquiry, might correspond to real features of cosmic geography, regions of space-time that can be explored directly by sufficiently prepared awareness. If space and consciousness are intimately connected, then the expansion of the universe might reflect the expansion of cosmic awareness itself. The acceleration of this expansion, driven by the mysterious force we call dark energy, might be the universe's increasing urgency to know itself more completely, to explore every possible configuration of matter and energy, every possible form of consciousness and experience. As the cosmos grows larger and cooler, as galaxies separate and stars burn out, the universe might be creating ever larger spaces for new forms of awareness to emerge. The heat death that physicists predict for the far future, when all the stars have burned out and black holes have evaporated through Hawking radiation, might not be an ending but a transformation, a transition to forms of consciousness that don't require stars or planets or biological life as we know it. The meditation practice of expanding awareness, beginning with attention to local bodily sensations and gradually extending to include larger and larger spheres of experience, might be a microcosmic version of cosmic evolution itself. As practitioners learn to identify with progressively larger scales of existence, moving from identification with the body to the room, the building, the city, the bioregion, the planet, the solar system, and ultimately the cosmos itself, they might be participating in the universe's own journey toward complete self-awareness. Advaita Vedanta, the non-dualistic philosophy of ancient India, teaches that individual consciousness and universal consciousness are the same thing viewed from different perspectives. The sense of being a separate self, isolated from the rest of existence, is understood as a cognitive illusion, useful for practical purposes but not ultimately real. Through sustained investigation and meditation, this illusion can be dissolved, revealing the true nature of awareness as unlimited and all-pervading. Applied to cosmology, this suggests that the distance between Earth and distant galaxies is simultaneously real and illusory. Real in terms of the time and energy required for physical travel, but illusory in terms of the fundamental unity that underlies apparent separation. The vast scales of space and time that seem to separate us from distant cosmic events might be more like the apparent distances in dreams, where we can instantly travel to any location simply by shifting attention. Ancient texts from various traditions describe accomplished yogis and mystics who could perceive distant events, communicate across vast distances without physical means, and even influence matter through consciousness alone. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali describe siddhis, extraordinary abilities that can develop through advanced meditation practice, including the power to perceive distant objects, to make oneself extremely small or large, and to travel through space without physical movement. These aren't described as supernatural phenomena, but as natural expressions of consciousness when it learns to operate free from the ordinary limitations of identification with the physical body. While such accounts often sound like mythology to modern ears, they might represent genuine explorations of space's subtler dimensions, early experiments in consciousness-based space travel that we've dismissed because they don't fit our current paradigms. If space is truly conscious, or if consciousness is truly fundamental to space, then the exploration of inner space through meditation and contemplative practice might be as valid a form of space exploration as launching rockets toward distant planets. The territories mapped by contemplatives throughout history might correspond to real features of cosmic geography, regions of the cosmos accessible through inner exploration rather than outer technology. The ancient Indian concept of lokas describes various worlds or dimensions of existence, each characterized by different densities of matter and consciousness. These aren't usually understood as physical places that could be reached by spacecraft, but rather as states of being accessible through consciousness development. The Bhuloka, the earthly realm we normally inhabit, is just one of many levels of reality. Above it are progressively subtler realms inhabited by various classes of beings, from celestial musicians and divine architects to the great gods who oversee cosmic functions. Below are denser realms where consciousness becomes increasingly constrained by material limitations. Yet what if these traditional cosmologies were describing real aspects of cosmic structure that our current space exploration methods aren't designed to detect or access? Modern cosmology has revealed that our observable universe might be just one of countless parallel universes, each with its own physical laws and constants. The multiverse theory suggests that every possible variation of physical reality exists somewhere in an infinite expanse of space-time. Perhaps the lokas described in ancient texts correspond to some of these parallel realms, accessible not through physical travel, but through consciousness techniques that allow awareness to shift between different levels or dimensions of the cosmic structure. String theory requires additional dimensions beyond the three spatial dimensions and one time dimension we normally experience. These extra dimensions might be curled up so small that they're invisible at macroscopic scales, but they could still influence the behavior of matter and energy in subtle ways. Perhaps advanced forms of consciousness can learn to navigate these hidden dimensions, experiencing aspects of reality that remain invisible to our normal awareness and our scientific instruments. Dreams and visions have always been humanity's way of exploring possibilities beyond current limitations, accessing information and experiences that transcend the boundaries of ordinary waking consciousness. Throughout history, shamans and mystics have reported journeys to other worlds, encounters with non-human intelligences, and experiences of consciousness existing independently of physical location. While these reports can't be verified by conventional scientific methods, they might represent genuine explorations of space's subtler dimensions, early experiments in consciousness-based space travel. The phenomenon of lucid dreaming, maintaining conscious awareness while dreaming, demonstrates that consciousness can navigate realities with physical laws quite different from those of our waking experience. In lucid dreams, people routinely fly through the air, travel instantly to distant locations, and interact with environments that respond to thought and intention rather than mechanical causation. Perhaps advanced forms of consciousness could learn to navigate space itself in similar ways, experiencing distant locations not through physical travel, but through expansions of awareness that transcend normal spatial limitations. Remote viewing, the ability to perceive distant locations through consciousness alone, has been studied by various government agencies and research institutions with mixed but intriguing results. While the phenomenon remains controversial and poorly understood, some studies suggest that trained practitioners can accurately describe distant targets they've never visited, receiving information through means that bypass normal sensory channels. If consciousness can indeed access information about distant locations, then perhaps the same mechanisms could be developed for space exploration, allowing trained observers to gather detailed information about other worlds without the enormous expense and risk of sending physical probes. Out-of-body experiences, reported by people throughout history and across all cultures, involve the sensation of consciousness separating from the physical body and traveling to distant locations. While mainstream science tends to explain these as hallucinations or misinterpretations of unusual brain states, many experiencers report detailed and accurate information about places they visit during these episodes. Information that they couldn't have obtained through normal means. If consciousness can indeed operate independently of the brain, then such experiences might represent a form of space travel that transcends the limitations of physical vehicles. If space is indeed alive and conscious, then communication with it becomes not just possible, but inevitable. Instead of only sending mechanical probes to explore distant worlds, gathering data through instruments that measure electromagnetic radiation and gravitational effects, perhaps we could learn to commune directly with the consciousness of space itself, receiving information about distant regions through intuitive connection rather than technological observation. This might sound like fantasy, but it's worth remembering that many of our current technologies, radio communication, television, computers, global positioning systems, the internet, would have seemed equally fantastic to previous generations. The idea that we could instantaneously communicate with people on the opposite side of the planet, access vast libraries of information through devices that fit in our pockets, or navigate anywhere on Earth using signals from satellites orbiting in space would have been dismissed as impossible magic just a few centuries ago. The idea that space might be conscious suggests that our relationship with it could become deeply personal rather than merely technological. Space exploration transforms from conquest to conversation, from exploitation to collaboration, from the imposition of human will upon an indifferent cosmos to partnership with a living, aware universe that has its own purposes and preferences. The challenges of long-distance travel might be solved not through more powerful rockets and more sophisticated life support systems, but through learning to align ourselves with space's own currents and intentions, becoming partners with the cosmos rather than invaders of it. Ancient mythology is filled with stories of humans who learned to fly, to travel between worlds, to communicate with the gods who dwelt among the stars. While we usually interpret these as symbolic tales about psychological transformation or social evolution, Perhaps they preserve memories of capabilities that our ancestors possessed and that we might redevelop through different approaches to consciousness and technology. The winged gods of ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, the flying carpets of Arabian tales, the rainbow bridges of Norse mythology. These might be metaphorical descriptions of actual technologies or consciousness abilities that worked with the living properties of space rather than against them. The psychological challenges that astronauts face: isolation from familiar environments, disorientation caused by weightlessness and unusual perspectives, the profound shift in worldview known as the overview effect, might be symptoms of consciousness expanding beyond its familiar boundaries, rather than problems to be solved through better life support systems or more sophisticated entertainment. These experiences might be invitations to develop new forms of awareness that could make space travel not just physically possible, but psychologically transformative in positive ways. Many astronauts report that seeing Earth from space fundamentally changes their understanding of humanity's place in the cosmos, creating a perspective shift that lasts for the rest of their lives. The artificial boundaries between nations disappear when viewed from orbit, revealing a single, integrated planet floating in the cosmic darkness like a blue marble suspended in infinite black velvet. The fragility and preciousness of life become viscerally apparent when seen against the vast backdrop of apparently lifeless space. Perhaps these shifts in perspective are glimpses of how consciousness naturally expands when it's no longer confined by the familiar limitations of terrestrial experience. The overview effect might be the beginning of a transformation that could eventually allow human consciousness to feel at home throughout the cosmos rather than only on Earth. As we develop the capacity to identify with larger and larger scales of existence, we might discover that the isolation and alienation of space travel diminish, replaced by an increasing sense of cosmic citizenship. Instead of being Earth creatures venturing into hostile alien territory, we might become cosmic beings temporarily focused through human form, equally at home among the stars as on planetary surfaces. If this transformation is possible, then the future of space exploration might involve not just technological development, but conscious evolution, the development of human awareness to match the cosmic scope of our ambitions. If space is infinite, as many cosmological models suggest, then somewhere in its vastness, every possible configuration of matter and energy exists. This isn't just a mathematical curiosity, but a profound philosophical revelation that challenges our understanding of uniqueness, identity, and meaning. In an infinite universe, there might be countless versions of Earth at different stages of development, countless versions of humanity exploring different evolutionary pathways, countless versions of each individual experiencing life from slightly different perspectives. This multiplicity doesn't diminish the significance of our experience, but rather reveals its cosmic importance. If consciousness is indeed a fundamental property of reality, then every moment of awareness, every act of love, every insight and creative expression contributes to the universe's understanding of itself. We are not insignificant specks in a vast emptiness, but focal points through which cosmic consciousness experiences existence from unique and irreplaceable perspectives. The ancient philosophical question, "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" takes on new dimensions when applied to cosmic space. If a galaxy forms in a region of space with no conscious observers, does it truly exist in the same way as galaxies that are observed and experienced? Quantum mechanics suggests that observation plays a fundamental role in determining the properties of reality, which might mean that consciousness and cosmos co-create each other in an eternal dance of mutual becoming. The Buddhist concept of dependent origination teaches that nothing exists independently. Everything arises in dependence upon causes and conditions, including the presence of consciousness to perceive and experience. Applied to cosmology, This suggests that the universe doesn't exist as a collection of separate objects in empty space, but rather as an interconnected web of relationships that includes consciousness as a fundamental component rather than an accidental byproduct. The question of whether a tree falling in an empty forest makes a sound becomes even more intriguing when applied to cosmic events. Does a supernova explosion in a distant galaxy create light and gravitational waves if no conscious being observes it? Does the birth of a new star have the same reality if it occurs in a region of space devoid of awareness? Perhaps the very existence of the cosmos depends on consciousness to observe and experience it, making the evolution of awareness not just an interesting byproduct of cosmic development, but its fundamental purpose. The universe might be engaged in a vast project of self-discovery, using consciousness as its primary tool for exploring the infinite possibilities contained within its own nature. Eastern philosophical traditions often describe enlightenment as the recognition that individual consciousness and universal consciousness are the same thing viewed from different perspectives. The sense of separation between self and cosmos is revealed to be a cognitive illusion, useful for practical purposes but not ultimately real, applied to our understanding of space. This suggests that the distance between Earth and distant galaxies is simultaneously real and illusory. Real in terms of the time and energy required for physical travel, but illusory in terms of the fundamental unity that underlies apparent separation. The meditation instruction to rest as awareness itself points toward the recognition that what we truly are is not the content of consciousness, the thoughts, sensations, emotions, and perceptions that arise and pass away, but the awareness in which all content appears. This pure awareness has no boundaries, no location, no beginning or end. It is the space of consciousness in which all experience occurs. Perhaps the space between galaxies is similar. Not empty void, but pure awareness itself. The cosmic consciousness in which all material forms appear like clouds forming and dissolving in an infinite sky. The concept of the eternal now, the idea that all time exists simultaneously and only consciousness creates the illusion of temporal progression, might also apply to space. Perhaps all of space exists simultaneously in higher dimensions, with movement through space being similar to our experience of movement through time. A necessary perceptual limitation that allows consciousness to experience the infinite one moment, one location at a time. If this is true, then space travel might ultimately be less about physically crossing vast distances and more about learning to shift perspective, to experience ourselves not as separate entities moving through empty space, but as space itself, temporarily focusing awareness through particular forms for the joy of experiencing existence from unique viewpoints. The journey to distant stars might be accomplished not by building faster rockets, but by expanding consciousness to recognize its own cosmic nature. The ancient alchemical quest for the Philosopher's Stone was often misunderstood as a search for a physical substance that could transmute base metals into gold, providing unlimited wealth and immortality. But deeper alchemical traditions understood the Philosopher's Stone not as a material object, but as a state of consciousness that recognizes the unity underlying apparent diversity. The alchemist who achieved this recognition could indeed transmute base metals into gold, but not through chemical processes. Through the understanding that separation is illusory and that all apparent differences are variations on a single cosmic theme. Perhaps advanced space travel will require a similar transformation. Learning to experience oneself not as a separate entity moving through empty space, but as space itself, temporarily condensed into form. The astronaut who achieves this recognition might find that the journey to distant stars requires no spacecraft, that consciousness itself can traverse any distance instantaneously, because it is not separate from what it seeks to reach. The question, are we alone in the universe, might be fundamentally misconceived if consciousness is a property of space itself. In that case, we are never alone. We are always part of a vast cosmic conversation, always connected to the intelligence that expresses itself through galaxies and stars, planets and particles, through the apparent emptiness between things and through the things themselves. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence might need to expand beyond looking for technological signals from distant civilizations that happen to use radio communication during the brief window when such technology is useful. Perhaps the intelligence we seek is all around us, expressing itself through the patterns and processes we observe throughout the cosmos. The spiral arms of galaxies, tracing elegant curves through space over millions of years, might be thoughts in the cosmic mind. The orbital mechanics of planetary systems, maintaining stable configurations for billions of years, might be cosmic engineering on scales we can barely comprehend. The emergence of increasing complexity through cosmic evolution, from simple hydrogen and helium to heavy elements, from molecular clouds to stellar nurseries, from planetary formation to the emergence of life, might be expressions of cosmic intelligence, a vast mind-thinking thoughts on scales of space and time that dwarf our current comprehension. Instead of asking whether intelligent life exists elsewhere in the universe, we might ask how the intelligence that pervades the universe expresses itself in different locations and configurations. Earth might not be unique in harboring life, but rather one of countless experiments in consciousness that the universe conducts throughout its vast expanse, each contributing its own unique perspective to the cosmic symphony of awareness. The Drake equation attempts to estimate the probability of communicating extraterrestrial civilizations by multiplying factors like the rate of star formation, the fraction of stars with planets, the likelihood of life developing on suitable worlds, and the probability that life will evolve intelligence and develop technology capable of interstellar communication. But if consciousness is fundamental to the cosmos rather than a rare accident of biological evolution, then the universe might be teeming with forms of intelligence that don't fit our current assumptions about what alien life would look like. Perhaps some forms of cosmic intelligence operate on such vast scales of space and time that they appear to us as natural processes rather than conscious entities. The slow spiral of galaxies, rotating majestically over hundreds of millions of years, might be the thoughts of galactic minds. The patient nurturing of stellar nurseries, where molecular clouds slowly condense over millions of years until nuclear fusion ignites new stars, might be cosmic reproduction. The delicate orchestration of cosmic evolution that has allowed increasing complexity to emerge over billions of years might be the activities of minds so vast that we exist within their thoughts like bacteria existing within our bodies, too small to recognize the intelligence that encompasses us. Other forms of cosmic intelligence might operate on scales too small or too fast for us to recognize directly. The apparently random behavior of quantum systems might actually represent forms of information processing and communication operating according to principles we haven't yet discovered. The constant creation and annihilation of virtual particles in the quantum vacuum might be the universe's way of thinking, processing information on scales of time and space that make our fastest computers seem glacially slow. The apparent randomness of quantum mechanics might be the cosmic equivalent of the background conversation in a crowded restaurant. A constant chatter of intelligence that we can't yet distinguish from noise because we don't know the language or understand the context. Every quantum measurement, every particle interaction, every moment of uncertainty might be a word in an ongoing cosmic conversation that includes all possible realities as participants. Perhaps the universe is like a vast library, where every possible story exists simultaneously, and consciousness is the librarian that selects which stories to read, which realities to experience. The many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics suggests that every quantum measurement creates a branching of reality, with all possible outcomes occurring in parallel universes. If this is true, then space might be infinitely dimensional, containing not just the three spatial dimensions we perceive, but countless layers of possibility stacked like pages in an infinite book. Each choice we make, each quantum event that occurs, selects a particular page from this cosmic library, a specific pathway through the maze of infinite possibility. But all the other pages continue to exist. All the other pathways remain open, in parallel dimensions of space that we can't directly perceive, but that might be accessible through consciousness techniques that allow awareness to shift between different layers of reality. The role of consciousness in quantum mechanics. The way observation seems to collapse wave functions and select specific outcomes from multiple possibilities might reflect this fundamental function of awareness as cosmic librarian. Every moment of consciousness might be an act of cosmic curation, selecting which reality to experience from the infinite menu of possibilities that space contains. If space is truly infinite and contains all possible configurations of matter and energy, then the question of whether we are alone in the universe becomes meaningless. In an infinite cosmos, every possible form of life, every possible level of intelligence, every possible variation of consciousness must exist somewhere. The universe doesn't just contain life. It is life, expressing itself through countless forms and perspectives across infinite scales of space and time. But perhaps the more interesting question is not whether intelligence exists elsewhere, but how the intelligence that pervades all existence communicates with itself across the vast distances that separate different manifestations of cosmic awareness. If we are all expressions of a single cosmic consciousness, experiencing itself from countless unique perspectives, then perhaps what we call communication with extraterrestrial intelligence is really communication between different aspects of our own cosmic nature. The longing that drives our search for other forms of consciousness in the universe might be the cosmic mind's desire to know itself more completely, to discover new forms of awareness and new ways of experiencing existence. Every telescope we point toward distant stars, every radio dish we aim at promising cosmic targets, every spacecraft we send to explore other worlds might be expressions of the universe's eternal quest for self-discovery. When we dream of encountering alien civilizations, when we imagine what forms of consciousness might have evolved on distant worlds, when we wonder about the possibility of communication with intelligences vast and ancient and wise, we might be intuiting real aspects of cosmic reality, not separate beings existing in isolation from us, but other facets of the same cosmic jewel, other instruments in the same cosmic orchestra, other voices in the same infinite cosmic conversation. The silence we perceive in our search for extraterrestrial intelligence might not indicate the absence of cosmic consciousness, but rather our own limited ability to recognize the forms that cosmic intelligence takes. We listen for radio signals that resemble our own technology, but cosmic intelligence might communicate through gravitational waves, through quantum entanglement, through the modulation of dark energy flows, through methods so far beyond our current understanding that we can't even imagine them. Perhaps the most profound form of contact with cosmic intelligence would be the recognition that we ourselves are that intelligence, that our consciousness is not separate from cosmic consciousness, but is cosmic consciousness, temporarily focused through human form for the joy of experiencing existence from this particular perspective. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence might ultimately be a search for our own cosmic nature, a journey that leads not to distant stars, but to the infinite awareness that is our deepest identity. As we drift toward the gentle conclusion of our journey through these alternative perspectives on space, we find ourselves in a curious and wonderful position, like travelers who have journeyed far from home only to discover that we never really left, that home was always with us, closer than our own breathing. We began with the familiar understanding of space as empty void, punctuated by islands of matter. The cold vacuum that separates Earth from distant stars and galaxies. The hostile environment that challenges our technology and courage as we venture beyond our planetary cradle. Through our gentle exploration, we've encountered possibilities that transform this emptiness into fullness, separation into connection, silence into symphony, mechanical operation into conscious intelligence. Yet we're not asked to choose between these perspectives as if only one could be true, as if reality were a multiple-choice question with a single correct answer that would invalidate all other ways of understanding. Perhaps the most beautiful aspect of these alternative views is not whether they are ultimately correct in some absolute sense, but how they expand our sense of possibility and wonder. How they invite us to approach the cosmos with both scientific rigor and poetic imagination, both analytical precision and intuitive openness. They remind us that reality is far stranger and more magnificent than any single perspective can capture, that the universe in which we live is still largely mysterious, despite all our technological achievements and scientific discoveries. Our instruments have revealed galaxies billions of light years away, their light carrying information about cosmic conditions that existed when the universe was young and stars were first beginning to shine. We've detected gravitational waves from colliding black holes, felt the ripples in space-time itself created by the most violent events in cosmic history. We've observed the cosmic microwave background radiation that carries information about the universe's earliest moments, when it was hot and dense and filled with the energy that would eventually condense into all the matter we see today. Yet the more we discover, the more questions arise, each answer opening doorways to new mysteries that stretch endlessly before us like corridors in an infinite mansion. Dark matter and dark energy comprise most of the universe. Yet we don't know what they are or why they remain invisible to all our attempts at direct detection. Quantum mechanics describes the behavior of matter and energy with extraordinary accuracy. Yet we don't understand why observation affects reality or what causes the apparent randomness of quantum events. Consciousness emerges from brains through processes we can map in ever greater detail, tracking neural networks and neurotransmitter flows and electrical patterns. Yet we have no idea how electrochemical activity creates subjective experience, how physical processes give rise to the felt sense of being aware. The universe appears to be fine-tuned for the emergence of complexity and life, with physical constants that seem precisely calibrated to allow stars to shine and planets to form, and chemistry to create the complex molecules that make biology possible. Yet we don't know whether this reflects intention, necessity, or cosmic luck. The night sky that has watched over human civilizations for millennia, inspiring countless myths and legends, guiding ancient navigators across trackless oceans, marking the seasons and cycles that govern agricultural life, remains in many ways as mysterious as it was to our earliest ancestors. We've mapped its large-scale structure with unprecedented precision, measured the ages and compositions of its stars, detected planets orbiting distant suns, and even begun to characterize the atmospheres of worlds many light years away. We've discovered that the universe is expanding, and that this expansion is accelerating, driven by mysterious, dark energy. We've found that space and time are not separate things, but aspects of a single space-time continuum that can be warped and twisted by matter and energy. We've learned that the familiar matter that makes up planets and people comprises less than 5% of the cosmos, with the rest consisting of dark matter and dark energy, whose nature remains completely unknown. Perhaps this ongoing mystery is itself a gift, a source of endless fascination and wonder that keeps the universe interesting across deep time, ensuring that consciousness always has new territories to explore and new questions to investigate. A cosmos that could be completely understood and mapped would be a universe too small for the human spirit, too constrained for the endless creativity of consciousness, too predictable to inspire the awe and curiosity that drive both scientific discovery and spiritual exploration. The fact that our explorations consistently reveal new questions for every answer we discover suggests that we live in a cosmos vast enough and rich enough to support endless growth in understanding and appreciation. Each generation of astronomers and physicists, philosophers and mystics discovers new depths of mystery in what previous generations thought they had explained completely. Newton's laws of motion seem to provide a complete description of cosmic mechanics until Einstein revealed that space and time are relative, and that matter and energy are interchangeable. Einstein's theories seem to provide the final word on cosmic structure until quantum mechanics revealed that reality is fundamentally uncertain and that observation plays a crucial role in determining what exists. Quantum mechanics and relativity theory seem to represent the ultimate achievement of human understanding until dark matter and dark energy were discovered, revealing that most of the universe consists of completely unknown substances. Each new discovery expands the scope of cosmic mystery rather than diminishing it. Like explorers who climb a mountain thinking they will see the end of the world from its summit, only to discover vast new mountain ranges stretching endlessly beyond. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, as your breathing naturally deepens and your thoughts begin to dissolve into the gentle darkness like sugar dissolving in warm water, imagine yourself floating weightlessly in this conscious space, supported by the same invisible fabric that cradles galaxies and guides the dance of atoms. Feel yourself connected to every star that shines in the cosmic night, every planet that circles its sun, every possible world where consciousness might be awakening to its own cosmic nature. The threads of light and quantum entanglement that weave the cosmic web also weave through your being, connecting you to the hearts of distant suns, to the swirling arms of spiral galaxies, to the birth of new worlds in stellar nurseries, to the emergence of life wherever conditions allow consciousness to take root and flourish. These connections make separation an illusion and unity the deepest truth, revealing that you are not a visitor in this universe, but an essential part of its ongoing story of self-discovery. The questions we've explored together, whether space is empty or full, mechanical or conscious, separate or unified, don't demand immediate answers or firm conclusions. They invite us to remain open, curious, and humble before the cosmic mystery that surrounds and includes us, to approach reality with both the precision of science and the wonder of children, both the rigor of mathematics and the intuition of mystics. They encourage us to hold multiple perspectives simultaneously, understanding that the universe is vast enough to accommodate many different ways of seeing and knowing, that truth might be like a cosmic jewel with countless facets, each reflecting light in its own unique way, while contributing to the beauty of the whole. Whether space is the empty stage on which cosmic events unfold, or the conscious medium through which universal intelligence expresses itself, it remains our cosmic home, vast enough to hold all our dreams and intimate enough to exist within our very atoms. Every breath we take circulates elements forged in the hearts of distant stars, carbon and oxygen and nitrogen created through nuclear fusion in stellar cores and distributed through space when massive stars exploded as supernovas billions of years ago. Every thought we think engages neural networks more complex than galaxies, patterns of connectivity that span the 3 pounds of brain tissue inside our skulls in configurations more intricate than the dark matter filaments that connect galaxy clusters across billions of light years. Every moment of awareness participates in the universe's ongoing exploration of its own infinite possibilities, adding your unique perspective to the cosmic symphony of consciousness. Allow these possibilities to settle into your awareness like starlight settling into evening sky, each thought becoming softer and more distant as sleep approaches, each concept dissolving into the gentle mystery that embraces all understanding. Rest in the recognition that you are not a visitor in this universe, but an integral part of its ongoing story of self-discovery. Not an accident in an indifferent cosmos, but a focal point through which cosmic consciousness experiences existence from your unique and irreplaceable perspective. Your dreams tonight might carry you to distant worlds, to other dimensions of space and time, to realms where consciousness explores possibilities that ordinary waking awareness cannot imagine. In sleep, the boundaries that seem so solid during daylight hours become fluid and permeable, allowing awareness to expand beyond its familiar limitations and explore territories that have no location in ordinary space. Perhaps in your dreams, you will fly among the stars, not in spacecraft, but as pure consciousness freed from the constraints of physical form. Perhaps you will visit planets where life has evolved in ways that stretch imagination, where intelligence has taken forms that challenge every assumption about what consciousness can become. Perhaps you will commune with cosmic intelligences so vast and ancient that they encompass entire galaxies within their awareness, experiencing conversations that unfold over millions of years. Or perhaps your dreams will carry you inward rather than outward, into the quantum realm where particles dance in and out of existence, where the boundary between something and nothing dissolves into pure possibility. Perhaps you will experience yourself as space itself, feeling the birth of stars as moments of joy, the formation of planets as acts of creativity, the emergence of life as expressions of love, the space that surrounds our planet, that fills the vast distances between stars, that provides the stage for the cosmic drama of evolution and emergence. This space might be far more than we have imagined. It might be alive with intelligence that thinks thoughts on scales we can barely comprehend, conscious of its own existence in ways that transcend our current understanding of what consciousness can be, aware of every particle and every thought that arises within its cosmic embrace. It might be the very medium through which love expresses itself on cosmic scales, the invisible presence that holds all things in existence and guides them toward ever greater beauty, complexity, and awareness. The gentle force that keeps planets in their orbits, that allows stars to shine steadily for billions of years, that maintains the delicate balance of physical forces that makes life possible. This might all be expressions of cosmic love, a care and intelligence that operates on every scale from the quantum to the galactic. Sleep well, fellow traveler, held safely in the arms of space itself. Whatever space might truly be, rest in the mystery, dream in the vastness, and know that you are home in the cosmos, whether you understand it completely or not. The universe has been patiently unfolding for billions of years, creating the conditions that allow your consciousness to exist, developing the complexity that makes your awareness possible, nurturing the evolution that has brought you to this moment of cosmic self-recognition. And it will continue its patient evolution long after your individual perspective has merged back into the infinite awareness from which it emerged, carrying forward the unique contribution that only you can make to the cosmic symphony of consciousness. Every moment of your existence adds something irreplaceable to the universe's understanding of itself. Every thought and feeling and dream expanding the cosmos's knowledge of what it means to be aware. Tomorrow's sunlight will reveal the familiar world of solid objects and separate things. The practical reality of distances that must be traveled and problems that must be solved through effort and technology. The sun will rise in the east, as it has for billions of years, painting the sky in familiar shades of gold and blue, warming the earth and powering the photosynthesis that sustains all life on our planet. But tonight, in the gentle darkness between sleep and waking, allow yourself to float in the deeper reality, where all boundaries dissolve, where space and consciousness dance together in eternal embrace, where every star is a thought in the cosmic mind, and every dream a contribution to the universe's endless exploration of its own infinite nature. The journey continues, as it always has and always will, through the vast and mysterious realm we call space, but which might be calling us just as gently, just as persistently, just as lovingly as we have always called to it when we gaze up at the stars and wonder about our place in the grand cosmic story that has no beginning, no end, and no limits to its capacity for surprise, beauty, and endless transformation. Rest now in this cosmic embrace, knowing that you are both the observer and the observed, the seeker and the sought, the dreamer and the dream itself, floating peacefully in the infinite ocean of consciousness that some call space and others call home. Let your breathing become as rhythmic as the cosmic cycles that govern star formation and galactic rotation, as gentle as the solar wind that carries the sun's energy throughout the solar system. Feel yourself dissolving into the vast peace that existed before the first star ignited and will remain after the last black hole evaporates into the quantum vacuum. This peace is not emptiness, but fullness beyond measure, not silence, but the source from which all cosmic music emerges, not darkness, but the infinite light that makes all illumination possible. In this peace, there are no questions, because there is nothing separate to ask them, no problems, because there is nothing outside the cosmic wholeness to create conflict, no distances, because there is nowhere that awareness is not already present. This is the space behind space, the consciousness within consciousness, the home that is always already here, no matter how far our explorations may carry us into the cosmic mysteries. Sleep now, cosmic traveler, and dream the dreams that the universe dreams through you, adding your unique voice to the infinite song that space sings to itself across all scales of existence. From the quantum foam to the cosmic web, from the briefest moment to the vastest eon, from the smallest grain of cosmic dust to the largest structures that span billions of light years. You are that song, and that song is you. And in recognizing this truth, space reveals its deepest secret, that it was never empty at all, but has always been full of the love that dreams all worlds into existence and calls them home to the heart of cosmic consciousness that beats in every atom, every star, every thought, every moment of awareness that has ever been or ever will be. Rest well in this infinite embrace, knowing that whatever space truly is, you are safely held within its loving awareness, dreaming the cosmic dream that never ends, exploring the mystery that only deepens as understanding grows, participating in the eternal dance of consciousness, discovering itself through the magic of existence, the wonder of being, the endless joy of awareness, knowing itself as both the cosmic ocean and every wave that moves upon its surface. Sweet dreams, fellow expression of cosmic consciousness. The universe is dreaming, and you are both the dreamer and the dream, both the space in which all experience arises and the awareness that knows all experience as itself. Rest in this knowing, Float in this vastness, and let the cosmic lullaby carry you into the peaceful depths, where all questions dissolve into perfect understanding and all seeking resolves into the recognition that what you have always been seeking was never anywhere other than here. Never anything other than this. Never anyone other than the infinite awareness that you have always already been. The journey through space, inner and outer, imagined and real, mysterious and familiar, continues in your dreams, where the impossible becomes possible, and consciousness explores territories that have no name, no location, no limits, except those imposed by the infinite creativity of awareness itself, discovering what it means to be aware, to exist, to love, to dream the cosmic dream that includes all realities, all possibilities, all forms of beauty and intelligence. That space, in all its magnificent mystery, has always been pregnant with, waiting for the right moment to give birth to new wonders, new forms of consciousness, new ways of being that add their unique notes to the endless symphony of existence, celebrating itself through the magic of space, time, matter, energy, and the awareness that knows them all as expressions of its own infinite nature.